Today, we're going to discuss why UK estate agents are required to ask buyers for ID, proof of funds, proof of the source of funds, and what this means to you as a buyer. The key thing here is that we are required to ask for it by law. The first thing to discuss is what is it that we ask you for? An estate agent will ask you for ID. First of all, we need to run ID checks to confirm that you are who you say you are. They will ask you for proof of the money that you're using to buy the property you want to buy through the agent. And importantly, in recent years, we also have to ask for proof of the source of the funds. This is very, very important, and it's something that a lot of buyers don't know about. Under the Money Laundering Regulations Act of 2017, estate agents are now required to conduct due diligence checks, and in some cases, enhanced due diligence checks on buyers and on the funds that those buyers are using to buy property. Now, we speak to buyers on a fairly frequent basis who have no idea that we are required to conduct these checks, and it can sometimes get a bit frustrating both for the buyer and for us as agents. It's a level of sort of checks that we never used to have to do. So we're sort of doing more for getting paid the same. And buyers are frustrated because they're having to prove lots of things to an estate agent that they're then going to have to go on and prove to the solicitor that they're using to purchase the property. A good example of this is one we've had recently where a buyer is buying a property over £1 million. And a large chunk of the cash, about 600,000, is coming from the sale of a property which happened a few years ago. As far as the buyer is concerned, that was legal and above board. They have the money sat in their bank account and they're going to use it to buy a house. Normally people are honest and straight, and what they tell us is normally factually correct, but we are required to prove that that is the truth. We are required by HMRC and by the law to check that that is correct. So in this particular instance, what we have asked the buyer to do is to prove to us that that 600,000 came from the sale of a house. Now, that should be quite straightforward to do. You'll have a completion statement from the solicitor when the house sale completed. You'll have a memorandum of sale from the estate agent, probably, that you sold it through. You'll be able to show the money going from the solicitors into your bank account. So it is fairly straightforward to do. It's just sometimes, if it happened a few years ago, it's maybe not that easy to find the documents. And if you're not expecting to be asked it by the agent, it can be a bit frustrating to have to think of all these things to send to an estate agent. But nevertheless, it definitely is something that agents have to do, and you should be expecting it as a buyer. Money laundering is, I think the definition is to disguise the source of where money's come from, and then criminals will use property to, the term is to clean the funds, so to ensure that the funds then become legitimate and can be used for other, more legitimate means. So it's a criminal matter, and it's very, very important that as agents we are there as the first line of defence to try and prevent that happening. So this matters for the property market because it helps to maintain trust, integrity, transparency in property transactions, and property in the UK and across the world is a prime target for criminals, in particular higher end homes. So it happens an awful lot in the southeast, in the capital, in London, but as the property market grows across the rest of the country and there's more £1 million plus properties being sold, then it will happen more across the country as well. So it's vitally important that these checks are done. It helps prevent crime, but it also helps to prevent property sales falling through further down the line. So if an estate agent hasn't done their job properly at the start, and when the solicitors do their financial checks further down the line, sales can fall through if the money isn't genuine from a genuine source, which then affects the whole chain, and it can affect tens, if not hundreds of people's lives across the chain with the outflow that it can cause. So it's extremely important that it's done, and as I keep saying, it is by law. So as a buyer, you should be expecting this. So I think it's important to cover off what can happen to an agent if they don't do the checks properly. So it can be a criminal offence if things are missed. Certainly, if things are done on purpose, then there are criminal penalties if things are missed. So, and potential prison sentences, you know, so it's vitally important that an agent does these checks. It could impact the whole chain, as I've mentioned already, and the agent can risk their business being closed down if checks aren't done correctly, if there's no paper trail of things being checked properly, then HMRC can impose massive fines, and ultimately that could lead to an estate agent's business being closed down. So please make sure you know that you're expecting to be asked for these documents and proof when you come to buy a house. Ways that you can make the process easier as a buyer is to have all your documents ready before you start viewing properties. So be expecting to have to prove the source of your funds. Now, an easy example from the estate agent's perspective of a sort of easy proof of funds transaction is someone who is buying a house for £500,000. They're getting a £450,000 mortgage, which is a big mortgage, but it does happen. And they have £50,000 in premium bonds that they've been saving for the last 5 years. And that is the only cash that's going into the deal. That's really straightforward. Another example is someone who is selling a property. So they already own a house. It's got 200 grand equity in it. They're using that 200 grand as the deposit for their mortgage on their purchase property, and they're getting a mortgage for the rest. So they can prove that the equity is where the cash is from, and they can prove the mortgage via a mortgage agreement in principle. There are easy examples, but there's also far more challenging examples. And at the higher end of the market, there's a lot more cash, a lot more liquidity. So quite often there's a lot more detailed checks that we have to do on the source of funds. So please don't get annoyed with estate agents that are asking you for this. The agent has enough on their plate already with trying to get a sale of a property through. And it is very challenging sometimes dealing with buyers who aren't expecting us to ask these questions. Please don't shoot the messenger. This is government level legislation that we have to adhere by. Okay, so to recap, AML, anti-money laundering, proof of funds, checks, and ID checks are there to protect everyone. They're there to protect you as a buyer. They're there to protect the seller. They're there to protect the chain. They're there to protect everyone that's affected by the chain. So it's a necessary evil, but it's one that you will come up against when you're trying to buy a house. If you think you know anyone who's looking to buy a house, please share this video with them. They may find it very useful. Please make sure that you subscribe to our page and hit the bell notification for future videos. Bye.